Thank you. Everybody having a good show? Isn't this fantastic? 4 days of just talking about fishing, hanging out with some of the coolest people around. I love this, my favorite time of year. Thank you all for coming today. I see a lot of you are repeats from yesterday's talk. Those of you who didn't hear me yesterday, you really missed out. I was amazing. But you can handle today's talk without having been at yesterday's talk, so it's all good. Today I'm going to be talking about making the most of your social media experiences, and we're going to look at some strategies for really using your social media to reach your customers and your clients. Now, as John said, I am chair of the English department at the University of Florida, go Gators, and I do teach digital media and emerging technology there, and in fact in the fall I'm teaching a digital literacy course, and so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today we're going to get sort of cursory introductions to, and these are subjects that if you were actually in my class for a semester we'd spend a lot more time talking about it in greater detail. So let's talk about social media. And before I do, actually, thanks to ASA, thanks to everything they do for putting on ICAST, Mary Jane Williamson especially, who organizes the Lunch and Learn sessions. But let's get into cramming a lot of information about social media in fairly quickly today, and then we'll give the opportunity for questions and answers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and basically give some tips, hints, advice, those kinds of things. But in doing so, what I'm also going to do is talk about sort of the back end about how we think about these things, so that you're also getting sort of a mindset of thinking through how social media actually works. Now, in the past, social media and circulation sort of happened organically, right? You'd post some stuff up there and you'd hope a bunch of people would like it or share it. And you know, that sort of cliched notion of I want it to go viral, for which there was never any actual definition of what that meant. You know, I was always excited initially if I got 50 people to actually click on something. But unfortunately that organic circulation isn't the primary way stuff moves now. Because like any other industry, any other kind of institution, social media figured out that they can make money off your circulation. And so a lot of how social media content circulates now is based on what you're willing to pay for it to circulate. But I'm going to talk about some of the positives and the negatives of the fact that social media now requires not just a time investment, but a financial investment as well, as we're thinking about how we're moving our stuff out there to customers and clients. So, yeah, I mean, there's still a lot that goes on with organic circulation, but now the paywalls are keeping things moving. I also want you to understand that keeping a social media campaign running is a time investment. It isn't something that you can just say, oh, I'm going to post a picture and 3 days from now I expect to be Insta-famous and everybody will be buying my product. That, like any other kind of marketing strategy pre-social media, social media marketing campaigns require both time and, as I said, often financial investment. So a lot of what we have to do is transfer our thinking from how we used to do marketing into how we're doing marketing via social media now. It's not just this random, oh, I put something up there, I'm gonna have circulation. So I'm going to offer some advice today about maximizing your social media, and I'm also going to offer some advice about maximizing your time, how to do things a little more time efficient in your social media. All right, let's talk about making the most of your social media. And our first question is, what do you actually want from your social media campaigns? Why are you on social media, other than all the kids are doing it, right? We've got to think through why we're actually there. And part of that is thinking about, when it comes to my social media, what are my goals? What do I want from this? And one of the primary goals most of us have with our social media campaign revolves around our levels of engagement. How much is our audience actually engaging with what we're putting out there? Okay, so part of what we have to do is establish thinking about what is the engagement I want from my social media. Am I just happy that I posted a picture and my mom and my dad and a couple other people clicked like? Or are we looking for a particular kind of engagement? Click-throughs to our web page, purchases, content, following, all of those different things. How do we want our audience to engage with what we're putting into our social media? And again, we tend to, with social media, create these sort of ambiguous goals of, I just want people to see this. Well, that's really not an objective or a goal. We want more specifics than that. So I'm talking, for example, a level of engagement. One of our goals might simply be to increase our followers, to have more people aware that we are there. But within that, we want to have a framework. Even saying I want to increase followers is still kind of ambiguous. So we need to be able to establish goals, and realistic goals. For example, I want to increase our followers by 25% over the next 6 months. Because if we were running a campaign outside of social media, we would never say we're going to spend $50,000 on magazine ads and we're just going to kind of hope it does something. We're going to say we're going to run this ad for 3 different issues. We're going to look at how much that generated in terms of sales. We got to do the same thing with our social media and establish realistic goals for what we want to get. So if our goal is to increase visibility, then we want to talk about what that number is and how long we're going to take to do it. You're not going to do it today. You're not going to post pictures from ICAST and wake up on Monday morning and go, wow, I've got 100,000 more followers than I had on Friday before ICAST. So we need to establish a goal of what do we want to do, when do we want to do it by. Okay, so the next part of this is, where are our followers? Okay, we want to know, we can't all operate on every social media platform. So part of what we want to understand is if I want to increase my followers, I've got to determine which followers I'm talking about. And that's got to be really realistic, because the idea that I'm going to hit all, and here I've just got an example of about 15 different social media platforms with their icons up there. There's no way any of us are posting on all of those and expecting in the same breath that I'm going to have more people reach out to me on LinkedIn and the exact same time they're reaching out to me on TikTok and following me on TikTok, right? So we've got to figure out what platform we're on. And part of that is figuring out who our audience is. We've really got to understand and use analytics. Now, all of these social media platforms have analytic tools that will help you track where, when, how your audience is following you. I really recommend that you pay attention to your analytics, and I'm going to talk about this a couple of times, because it may be that you're finding out that your analytics are garnering more responses via YouTube than via TikTok, and you're going to find out more information when you look at those analytics. And now you can start to refocus moving into where and what and when, and I'll talk about the when in a second, am I posting, okay? So you also now, using this analytics, need to be able to set time expectations. How long am I going to take to do this? It's not going to happen overnight. None of you have established your brands overnight and just suddenly become the brand of, rod manufacturers or whatever it happens to be. So set realistic time expectations. You're not going to wake up tomorrow, like I said, insta-famous. All right, so where are your audience? Look at what platforms you're using. And when I say where is your audience, you really need to think this through, because a lot of where your audience is has a lot to do with where your customers are. And I mean this both geographically, demographically, but also on social media platforms. So, if your product is that you are selling, I don't know, I'm making stuff up as I go. If you're selling adult undergarments for incontinent anglers, I don't know where that came from, but chances are you're not going to be doing this on TikTok, right? Because that's not the audience on TikTok. I'll drop that example because it's just, but I don't know, maybe on LinkedIn, they're more geriatric anglers in need of your product. So part of thinking this through is what social media platform are your potential customers? Where, who is the demographic that you're really targeting? And, even if you're trying to sell a video game to anglers, an angler video game, Maybe that's better served on TikTok simply because of the age of the population that, primarily operates on TikTok and, their attenuation to video game products, right? So you want to think through matching your social media platform with what you're trying to accomplish and what your purpose on being social media is. Okay, also, it would be really great when you enter into a social media campaign to ask yourself, who is my audience? Now, I will tell you, in every single class that I teach, writing class, digital media class, we spend the first several weeks talking about how do we learn, how do we do audience analysis, and ask, who are my audience? And there are a lot of ambiguous answers to this. So for instance, I know that most of us, when we're on social media, if we post a cool picture from ICAST, if I said to you, who do you want to see this? Your response is gonna be everyone, and as many people as possible. Sorry, everyone is not an audience. As many as possible is not an audience. It's a fantasy, right? I mean, every time I do something on social media and I look at it, or I do a podcast episode or whatever it happens to be, I think, wow, this is some good stuff. I'm awesome. I put this up. Everybody's going to look at it. Guess what? Everybody doesn't look at it. My mom does, but she's kind of obligated. But so everyone is not an audience, or as many people as possible is not an audience. You really want to be specific in thinking about this. My audience is bass anglers who happen to be in a demographic that earn enough money to purchase the kind of product that I'm serving, or their parents will have enough money to purchase the kind of product. Now I'm narrowing down who my audience is, right? This is not an entry-level rod that I'm selling. This is a pro caliber rod that I'm selling. So I may be targeting entry-level anglers because I want them to fantasize about having my caliber of rod, but my real audience is knowing the demographic of where are the people who buy this caliber of rod. Everybody follow what I'm saying? This requires, with any kind of content you're producing, thinking about how am I reaching this audience specifically, and who are they? The other kind of question is, what kind of content do they prefer? Right? So does my audience prefer short, unedited videos that were made on an iPhone like TikTok or something like that? Or do they prefer longer, more descriptive videos that would be more appropriate on my YouTube channel? Or do they just want a meme? Or do they want technical information in an infographic? So part of understanding who our audience is also asking, what kind of content does my audience most frequently engage with? And this goes back to knowing what platforms your audience is using. So if you're on Instagram, for instance, and a lot of your audience is on Instagram, which is very much a short video and still image based kind of social content, if you're putting up an infographic that is so dense with text that even reading it on a mobile device is difficult, you've got the wrong platform for the information you want to convey. So we want to think through that quite a bit. Okay, but really all that is a matter of adaptability, figuring out where your audience is and adapting your content to that platform. Okay, also think about when your audience is actually reaching your content. What time of day do you want your posts to appear? So for some audiences, particularly those who work 9-to-5 jobs, it's more likely that they're going to be accessing content either before that 9 o'clock hour or after that 5 or 6 o'clock hour when they're not in work. Particularly when you're working in an office where there's a lot of surveillance from your boss and you're going to get in trouble if you're on Facebook instead of doing accounting reports or whatever business people do. So you want to think about when they prefer to get their content, and you want to strategically place your posts around that timing. Because think about all these platforms and how fast content is scrolling through, and it's very easy for them to miss it. So you actually don't want your audience to think, oh, I'm going to go just randomly scroll through at 3 o'clock when you posted stuff 6 hours ago, because where is it in the stream at that point? It's already moving. So we want to think about when do they get their content also. Now, this is what I consider one of the most important points that I'm going to make today. When we're talking about audience, I tend to think about our engagement with our audience in two kinds of approaches, and that's the difference between followers and the difference between family. And what I mean by that, and I will also tell you, what I'm getting ready to tell you is one of the things that takes a lot of time, and it's one of the things that I'm really bad at, And so, as I said yesterday, this is one of those do as I say, not as I do moments. But, you know, I'm a father, so I have lots of those moments with my kids. But which would you rather have in this scenario? Would you rather have 100,000 followers so that when somebody clicks on your profile, it says 100,000 followers and their jaw drops? Oh my God, this must be incredible if 100,000 followers. But of those 100,000, very few actually engage with your material. They don't share it. They don't push it out to their friends. They don't respond to you. And the reality is, half of them are probably bots anyway. Or would you rather have 100 followers who engage your material every time, comment on it, share it, actually go to your product or service? That to me is the difference between followers and family. I'd rather develop social media interaction with people that create those close-knit relationships than having it look like, wow, this person's really popular because they've got 100,000 followers. And frankly, from my perspective, if I open up, so click on one of your posts and it says followed by 150,000 people, my immediate thought is that this is coming from a click farm, that most of these are bots, and that there's no actual engagement. You know what I'm looking at instead of your followers? When you post something, I'm looking at how many people have retweeted it, how many people have commented on it. That gives me a better clue of what the engagement is rather than how many followers. And as a prime example, I'll tell you that over the last 2 weeks, one of my accounts, my followers have been just climbing rapidly. And I looked at where they're coming from, and I'm sorry, and forgive me if you find this inappropriate, most of it are young women trying to sell that I connect to their fans only or OnlyFans or whatever it is, trying to get me to give them money to be on their pages. And so a lot of those I click off, because they're not I don't want to have 45 new fans who are just there hoping that I'm going to now pay subscriptions to whatever it is they're selling. So a lot of times in terms of followers versus family, I like to really look at those analytics. Where is this coming from? If I suddenly have an upsurge in followers and I go to my analytics, and YouTube is great for this, and it says they're coming out of Southeast Asia, I know it's a click farm. I know that it's somebody's paying to have all these people click on this and make it look, and you can buy this. You want to have 100,000? Just put it in. Say, I'd like to have 100,000 fans on Facebook or whatever. They'll get them for you. Yeah, none of them will ever engage. So think about your followers and who they really are and what those numbers actually mean. All right. So the other thing is to promote that engagement. You can't just look at who's responding to your stuff and just say, oh, that's really cool, so-and-so responded, I gotta share, all this. Engage. This is where the time commitment comes in. Respond to the questions that they ask. If they respond to you, hit the @mention thing. Name them. Make it look like it's personal rather than, and I'll talk about this in a second, an automated response. Thank you for your response. A representative will be in touch, in 12 days. That's so impersonal, and I don't think, and then I know, oh, now I'm being responded to by the AI bot rather than the company actually cares what I think. If they share something, if they mention you, send them a thank you. Let them know that you're alert to their engagement because they will engage more. We all want to feel thanked when we do things. So do this in the social media too. Thank them. And start conversations with people. Don't just repost their stuff. Say, hey, I saw your post. I'm going to repost it. Thanks for letting us use your content. Really love what you guys are doing. That reciprocal kind of relationship. That's family versus followers. It makes sense to everybody? You've got to engage on social media. If it's just all, I put a picture up, you comment, I ignore you, what's the point? Okay. All right, now I mentioned this yesterday, and this is a strategy that I think is just paramount to how we think about our social media, is schedule and cache your posts. In other words, front load a lot of your content. I talked about this yesterday in my content session. One of the hardest things to do is to sustain a social media campaign. I mentioned yesterday that most podcasts that start fail after the 6th to 8th episode because the people producing them get to that episode and go, I don't know what to do next. And so with my rodcast, not podcast because it's fishing, right? Come on, that's funny stuff. I'm giving you A material here today, people. So what I did was I built out 6 months of shows. So in fact, yesterday, my new episode popped up, all of my followers were notified, and my social media campaign went out on all the platforms I use, alerting my followers that the new episode is up, and I didn't have to lift a finger. I was here talking to those of you who were here, walking around the show floor. But by having content already set every day, the two things happen. One, my time becomes easier. I don't have to every day go, oh, it's time for me to take an hour break from working with customers or product, and now I got to think about what my social media is today. So it saves me time. The other thing is it allows me to develop a consistent flow of information to create a message I'm trying to get across, to convey the ethos that I want. Because today I may put up a picture from somewhere at ICAST. And tomorrow I may post a picture from over at Mel Beach at Sebastian with a snook. And yeah, they're kind of related in fishing, but what is it I'm trying to convey? Hey, I'm really interested in this new product, or hey, I caught a cool new fish. How does that inconsistency in message, how does that build the ethos I want about my brand, and how does it keep my audience engaged? What am I going to get from Sid today? I have no idea. It may be a picture of his lunch, or it may be an interview at ICAST. You never know. You don't want that kind of inconsistency, okay? That's why building it out and scheduling it, and all social media platforms have these calendars where you can build your stuff out in advance. It also allows you then to edit and adapt so that if, hey, I've decided I'm going to have a sale next week, but my cachet has got me, only for the next 6 months, plug it in right then and there. Now you've got daily stuff that you can add at any point. So I really think planning ahead for your campaigns makes things easier. It also makes things just more consistent. Okay, and like I said at the beginning, having all this front loaded is it just saves you so much time. Right. Tied to this, there are a lot of services that will automate cross-platform posting for you. So even though I use the calendar for YouTube or Podbean to have my stuff posted to those platforms, via Hootsuite, Social Pilot, a bunch of the others, you can actually have, and some of these are paid subscriptions. I mean, again, it's the opportunity that you're paying for the resource to do things more efficiently. You can say, for instance, go to Hootsuite, put in a post that's supposed to show up in 2 days and identify, I want it on my Facebook, I want it on my Instagram, I want it on my YouTube channel. And now I don't even have to worry about cross-platform stuff. I can have it show up everywhere without me having to do anything because I took care of this 6 months ago. And so I really recommend automating as much as you can your post, and then buffering that with the new stuff, the instant stuff, the immediate stuff, because it will save you an immense amount of time. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty. On any of our social media platforms, one of the things we're still operating with is search engine optimization. Now, I know a lot of people still aren't talking about SEO as much as we used to, but on your profiles for all of your social media stuff, what's on the permanent profile page, the thing that holds, that's the anchor to your social media on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, the things that are on your profile are the things through which searches, Google searches, Bing searches, whatever it happens to be, that people who aren't on your feed are going to locate your social media. So you want to make use of this profile page to contain particular information that the web spiders and web crawlers, the search engine optimization tools, are going to be able to locate you. Now, I'm not going to go into the technical details of how all these things work, but here's the thing. If you work in ice fishing and your profile page doesn't have key terms from the ice fishing side of things, when people are Googling ice fishing stuff, you're not going to come up. And because this is the foundation hard part of your social media that doesn't change, you want to populate your profile with the key terms that are going to be found by search engines. So one of the things I talk about a lot is how important your profile page is, not necessarily whether you have a cool picture, but what are the key terms that you're plugging in there in order to be found. So relevant keywords. And the other thing here is, look, and I mentioned this yesterday, outside of government and law, right now, 80% of our communication is visual, 20% is textual. So you really want to drive your social media with visuals, lots of visuals, stockpile them, use them. And I went over some ways to do that yesterday, and I'm not going to get into all of that. However, what I do want to say about that is just be careful of copyright infringement. It's better to use your stuff, use the pictures you want. I mean, even here, so these, I randomly just pulled these off of posts that I've made before. And even though I cover fishing all over the place, what you can tell immediately from this, what's the first thing you recognize about all these images? I'm a saltwater guy, right? And I don't have to say that at all, because every single one of these makes a visual, informatic, persuasive argument that, hey, this guy's working in saltwater. So you want to think through how over time your social media images are conveying those kinds of identities of your brand and your company as well. So visuals, visuals, visuals. Now, photos aren't the only thing. Use other kinds of visuals, infographics, other kinds of data visualizations, particularly if you are selling product that there's data that supports the function of your product. These kinds of data visualizations bring a particular professional ethos to what you're circulating as well. Everything you do on social media doesn't have to be captured by your cell phone because you saw your cat playing with your favorite rattle trap. You know, don't forget that. Disclaimer, rattle traps, cats, they don't go together, okay? Just, I don't want the rattle trap people coming after me, so. But think about the other kinds of visuals you can use, like these kinds of data visualizations. All right, here's another hint for great content for your social media. If you're gonna have photos and text, use behind the scenes stuff. Stuff that lets your customers and your followers feel like they get to be a part of your company, that they're following and seeing what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know about you, but I get really excited when one of my favorite lure companies posts a picture of their warehouse or posts a picture and some information about how they're molding that particular soft body. Let your audience see a little bit more of what's going on behind the scenes with your company rather than just cramming product or service down their throats on every single post that you make, right? Hey, my lure caught this fish. Hey, my lure caught this fish. Hey, my lure, right? At some point, your audience is going to go, I get it. But what happens when you say, hey, we'd like for you to see how we actually make this lure and the thinking that goes in behind this? Short videos, factory tours, those kinds of things. Great content and great circulation on social media. Also, customer photos. Doesn't have to be just what you want. Share your customers' photos or get pictures of your customers. This is actually a picture. Oh, no, I want you to go away. This is actually a picture from a buddy of mine. He's a guide out of Cedar Key here, Jimbo Keith and the Saltwater Assassins. And one of the things Jimbo is fantastic about is every day after his trip, you get pictures of his clients with their fish and testimonials from those clients, and it makes some of the best content out there. It's not just him saying, hey, I've got a charter service, we got an open day, but look what we did today, look what we did today, and it really drives a lot of content and a lot of followers and a lot of loyalty to his brand. Cover your events. If you have events, post them, let people know about them. Also, let them know your team. And your team is a great source for content, but it's always a good idea to let, you know, if I want to know who the people in the company are. I don't want to, if I'm going to build a family rather than followers, I want to know, oh, that was what John at ASA did today. That's kind of cool. You know, I want to feel connected. Now, I do want to say this behind the scenes thing. It's actually a weird kind of trope because how many of you have been to SeaWorld here in Orlando or San Diego or Texas, been to SeaWorld? So one of the things SeaWorld will sell you is the behind the scenes pass, so that you get a tour of behind the tanks, or you see the breeding ground. It's all fake. It's just another thing they're selling you, and it's not actually behind the scenes. It's just another stage they're performing for you. But all the families who go in there and say, I got to get to behind the scenes, what do they now feel their connection with SeaWorld is? I got to see the inner workings. So the behind the scenes stuff, your team stuff, you don't have to actually show the misery that your employees are going through while they're on the factory floor. You can tell them to smile. You can create the stage of where everything in our factory is always perfect, but think about how that creates that sense of, now I'm part of this company. And you can stage that as well as you can stage any other photograph of a fish. I remember the first media trip I ever went on, and I won't mention the advertising company or the companies involved. It was about 27 years ago. And I was working for the Fisherman magazine, and we're out there taking pictures, had these great snook and these great redfish, and it was like, okay, we're gonna drive over here because these mangroves are prettier to get the pictures, put them fish in the live wells. All right, now we're gonna take this fish and we're gonna dunk it and raise it, dunk it and raise it, so you get good water action and all of this. And I'm thinking, you're telling me that what I saw Roland Martin and Bill Dance doing back in the late 60s and early, that they were faking all these pictures? They're not, but that is part of the behind the scenes thing, is what am I staging? What do I want them to see? And you need to think about how that circulates on social media as well. Okay. Another great content thing is quote pics. I talked yesterday about databases. You have a pile of images. Sometimes it's not just a picture. Sometimes you want to plug in some text to have people read this. This was 2 books ago, Bill Dance did a blurb for me on it. So I thought, all right, put the blurb on a picture with Bill Dance in the book. That's good circulation. So think about having quotes on your pictures, things that will actually make, because I'm scrolling through and I just see a picture, what am I going to do? I'm going to keep scrolling. But if I have text, what does my eye want to do? Read what that text is. So think about adding text to the images rather than just I took a quick picture and now I'm going to put it up there as well. All right, this is another important approach to your social media campaigns. Keep up with what's trending and piggyback those trends. And in every corner of our industry, there's something trending, that there's something people are looking for. There's a conversation going on. And the question is, how do you figure out how to do that? Well, fortunately, there are a ton of applications out there, some free, some paid for. Google Trends, I use BuzzFeed BuzzSumo, and I pay for a BuzzSumo Pro account, and I have a list of target words. And what I do is I can either go to the page and Google for that day and find out who's talking about MirrOlure today, and I will get a demographic. There's a big conversation in the Northeast about MirrOlure and striper fishing. And what am I going to immediately do? I'm going to my social media and I'm going to take something, I'm going to put a post in about, hey, I did this with MirrOlures and striper. Now what happens? Now you've pushed yourself up into how people are looking for things, and you're going to end up in the conversation more regularly than if you're just hoping that what you post hits whatever's trending. It's a lottery, right? I'm hoping it shows up. But if I know what's circulating, now I know how to target this. Make sense? I really recommend keeping up with trends. I don't have it up here. Yeah, the YouTube trending is a phenomenal tool. I really recommend checking out YouTube trending. I think it's when you go onto YouTube on the right side menu, I think is where it shows up. Also, like I said at the beginning, this is where our advertising happens now. If you're not paying, one of the big advertising companies, if you're a smaller company, if Source Media or any of the others, are outside of your price range, there are ways to pay for circulation. There are ways to pay for getting things moving. Even little things on Facebook, hit that boost button, right? And put how much, it asks how much do you want to spend this week boosting this post. Minimum, I think, is $25, and it will tell you will get 3,000 more engagements or whatever it happens to be based on this $25. So you would pay for an advertiser before, and pay for advertising in magazines, pay for advertising on radio, pay for advertising on the people you're sponsoring, Same thing, you're paying for advertising here, and there are mechanisms built into all social media to be able to boost that stuff. Okay, and again, I want to come back to use your analytics. Figure out what your post is doing, how it's doing, and really start tracking what your posts are doing beyond the how many likes did I get. Particularly those that will provide demographics. Hey, I'm really peaking with high school bass fishermen in the Southeast. How do I continue targeting that? How do I keep pushing there? Or they are exactly who I don't want to do this. I was really looking for salmon fishermen in Alaska. Right now, what do I have to do to adjust? So pay attention to your analytics. All right, those are my key points for social media. This is my contact information. Plus I've got cards over here. So if you have questions, and like I said yesterday, I am always willing to be a high-paid consultant. If you need things, but please feel free to reach out to me. I do as much as I can for the industry, and I think those are my key points for today. So I think we're ready for Q&A stuff.
Looks like my Q&A mic died, so we're going to be using Sid. So we have time for a couple questions if anyone has one. Does anyone have a question? Oh, we got one.
You can still make up an answer if you want. It's fine. I did have a question in regards to scheduling your social media posts, but also maintaining that it's trending. So do you just go into Hootsuite and you schedule your posts, a couple months out? And then how do you go back into Hootsuite the day it's coming out and make sure it's trending, or find...
Can everybody hear me? Can we all heard this question? So, no, what I do is I think of that as two different streams into my overall process. If I've got it scheduled, anything I schedule is going to be calendar agnostic. It doesn't matter. It's not announcing a show this week. It's not all of that stuff I pepper in afterwards. If it's got to be out on a certain date and I can cache it, then I'll put it on that date. But let's say hypothetically that I've got my next 6 months of stuff out there, and then I'm in Virginia and I catch a world record tog, right? But I want to announce this right here, right now. I don't want to wait 6 months for that. I just go to my social media and post. Because if you've got the automated, whether it's Hootsuite or wherever, you don't disrupt the flow that you still have access to. And so I think of those as two threads going, or two streams going. I got to keep water metaphors, right? Not threads, streams, that go into what I'm trying to accomplish. Does that answer what you needed?
Anyone else? Oh, one at the back.
Hello, my name's Clifford Weedman. Got a question. Hashtags, effective, non-effective?
I'm really glad you brought that up. I did not build that into my talk today. The question about hashtags. Hashtags are crucial in terms of, or not crucial, but they're very important in reaching the audience you want. So here's what I recommend. And I forget there are a couple of sites, Google may be one, but what I really recommend, there are some fantastic tutorials out there called Understanding Hashtags. And what I really recommend, just as I talked about some of the key points here, watch one of the tutorials on how to use hashtags, because what you'll find is just putting a hashtag and putting it like hashtag Sid at ICAST, nobody is going to see that because that is not a hashtag thread. But hashtag ICAST 2022 is. So if you look at, there's a lot of tutorials. If you email me, I can send you direct links to the ones that I've used before. We'll teach you how to pick your hashtags, because on Twitter you can't just have an endless line of hashtags. You're still within your character count, right? But picking which hashtags are going to be most efficient for you. So I'm really glad you brought that up. But my sort of political answer is, you really need to learn how to do hashtags, but I'm not going to teach you that today. Look it up, right? It's on the syllabus, man. Come on.
Awesome. And we get time for one more question if anyone has it. Oh, here we go.
This is just a follow-up to the hashtag question. Is there, so say I just go out and take a picture and I put hashtag ICAST 2022, but it has nothing to do with that. Because I know that's trending. Maybe people that like fishing would look at that, but it has nothing to do with, how do you guard against that, or does it?
Because let's face it, anything we're doing to circulate information, and this has been true since long before the Greeks, even though, and now I'm going to go into professor mode, there's a very famous line, you all know this line, it comes out of Plato's The Phaedrus, classical rhetoric that affects how we think about how we persuade people, and the line goes like this: with great power comes great responsibility, right? Who is it? Spider-Man, right? It's common. So here's the thing. Anytime we have a communication platform, somebody's going to misuse it, and somebody's going to use it in a way that they think is going to be best. If you're doing that, if I take a picture of this microphone and I post hashtag ICAST 2022, most people are going to go, what? And they're going to ignore it and not pay attention. You do that multiple times, though, they're not looking at you anymore. If you're posting irrelevant content, think about it, particularly on Facebook groups, where they have all the lists of what we will not publish, right? They're establishing parameters. So if you're publishing irrelevant content, basically you're establishing yourself as irrelevant. And because a lot of us are really cynical about this, because if my posts are all just hard sell, how is my audience going to respond to everything being a hard sell? I'm tired of it. I don't want to look at your thread where everything is about buy my lure right now and you will be the greatest fisherman on the planet. I don't want that. I want to see engaging content. So if you're publishing irrelevant stuff, you're going to render yourself irrelevant pretty quickly. And as fast as things move, you're out. Yesterday, somebody also asked, tied to the same question, about the consistency in your posting. One of the hard parts about social media is if I post a bunch of stuff this week and I'm doing all right with it, and then I go on vacation or I'm too busy and I'm not posting for several days or a week or something like that, you're going to have a hard time bringing your audience back up, because the way the algorithms react is if I'm liking stuff over and over again, it's going to bump it up in my thread. But if you vanish and I'm not liking it, it's going to bump it down in my feed and I'm not going to see it as often. So that's why I recommend the automation, is because now you're consistently posting and you're consistently staying in people's feeds at the right time. So post irrelevant stuff or have big gaps, you're going to lose audience. All right, I guess that's it. We're running out of time. Thank you all very much for coming here. Please feel free to approach me during the show. If you have questions, I do have cards up here. And of course, subscribe to the Rodcast, man. It's the best fishing podcast out there. Thank you all.